Talk about Isaiah and his call. And like I said before, Isaiah grew up in Jerusalem in a family that you could say was kind of an insider family. His father Amaz was the cousin of King Amaziah, and he was born into a long line of court prophets. And so the thing about these court prophets, and I mentioned this last time, there are two things about them basically. One of the things is there's a tendency to want to tell the king what the king wants to hear, and to kind of not so much be a prophet, but just say, oh yeah, the Lord wants you to go into battle, go, it'll go well, sure, And so there's that tendency. But the other piece of it, the thing about the prophets in Jerusalem and the priests that were there, is they loved that temple. That temple in Jerusalem, and they believed in a place called Zion. That, this place called Zion was the city of God. That it was a mountain of the Lord that in the end times people would go to. People would go to from all around, from every nation, and they would go there and take their grievances to God, and God would give them judgment, and God would show them the truth. And so Isaiah, both of these kind of factor into his experience in the temple when he received his call. Because he believed in the temple. He loved the temple. He believed that Zion really was a place, and that this really was a reality that was going to happen, and that God's presence really resided in this temple. At the same time, he looked around him and he saw what people were doing in that place. And he saw people bowing to corrupt power and not challenging it and not calling it out, not saying, you need to take care of the widows and orphans, which is something that God always tells the people of Israel. God tells the people, you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. You need to take care of the sojourners in your land and love the alien as if they were your native born. And he sees that they're not doing these things. And that they're the princes who were charged with administering God's justice are instead enriching themselves. And so he's prophesying about all these different things. And he's sharing with people what he sees and what God has put on his heart to say. He's doing all of this before he goes to the temple, before he really receives his call. Okay. But in the year that King Uzziah died, that was when he went to the temple, because he wanted to see if God was still there, if God was really still present in that place, if this dream that he had of Zion, this place that had been talked about in his family, this prophecy about a reality that would one day come into being, if it was true. So he went into the temple and he saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high up above everything. And all of the corruption, all of the hypocrisy that he had seen take place in this temple, and all of the little gold statues and things that Solomon put in there against God's will when he built the temple, all of these were covered up by the robe, the hem of God's robe that filled the temple. They were all covered up because it was God's house, not just the trophy room of the Israelite king. So he's in the temple and he looks and he sees flying around in the air next to the throne seraphim. And as I shared last time, these seraphim, they aren't the cute little babies with wings. This isn't the Goodyear tire commercial. Seraphim are fiery cobras. And they're flying around. And they're saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Heaven and earth are filled with his glory." And as they offer this praise to God, the pivots on the threshold of the temple begin to shake. And the room fills with smoke. And Isaiah is terrified. He's overjoyed too, but he's terrified at the same time. And he's thinking, this is worshiping God. This is what it is. And he wants to worship God too. And so he tries to open his mouth. And he realizes that he can't. Because he stands condemned. He's there and he feels so visible and so obvious in his sin that all he can say is, "Woe is me, I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, from a people of unclean lips." Not only the people are unclean, he's unclean too. He's a part of them. And he accepts the fact that he too is sinful. So he says this, and he despairs. And he sees, he's looking around because he's feeling very conspicuous, and he sees that one of the seraphs has spotted him. And the seraph comes closer to him. And he's terrified because this flying snake that's made out of fire is coming towards him. But the seraph stops at the altar. And he takes some tongs and he pulls out a coal. And he brings it up to Isaiah. And he thrusts it in his face. And it burns his lips. And it's an indescribable pain. But then when the seraph, the fiery cobra, takes this coal away, he says, "See, this has touched your lips. And your guilt is departed. And your sin blotted out." And then Isaiah listens, and he hears a voice coming from the throne. And the voice is saying, "Who will go for us? Whom shall I send?" And Isaiah hears a voice coming out of him. It's as if it's not him speaking, but a voice coming from within him. As if there is a spirit inside of him that is proclaiming truth, that is from beyond the sinful human that he is. And that voice, which is not just his voice, but comes from his mouth, says, "Here am I, send me." And that's the word of the Lord for today. Amen.
Amen.